couple of months ago, we had a conversation with Farhan Tawar, VP of Engineering at Shopify. And part of the conversation was a topic I'm really interested in, which is it cannot be done in React Native. What can't you do in React Native? And because I'm so focused on the niche of gestures and animations, I have a list of advanced 2D use cases which you cannot do in React Native. And I think it's really cool to spend some time on these questions. And last time you and I talked, you said this.
So right now, I think Google Chrome is using Skia to render all of its content. So I assume it would also render all the SVGs via Skia. What if we try to port React Native SVG to Skia so that we could and then take the code from Google Chrome and port it so that we could draw all the SVG features like filters and masks.
Bringing Skia, which is the rendering engine of Flutter, Android, Google Chrome, in React Native is a very tough nut to crack. You need a top-class engineer who has intimate knowledge with GSI, C++ development, and reanimated too. It's a very niche skill set. And not all heroes wear capes, and Christian Falk certainly doesn't, but he's the co-founder of FrameX. It's a software agency that is building incredible React Native apps, and he has been involved with core React Native animations since the beginning, and also with GSI since the beginning as well. And we were on a Zoom call together, and he told me, you know what, this cannot be done in React Native use cases. Scratch it. We are gonna make it doable. So forget about it cannot be done. We are gonna just do it.
Wow, I mean, yeah, totally right. I think graphics, that's one of the biggest weaknesses in React Native. We also talked about like certain examples that we encountered in our own apps where only like drawing a big SVG would already result in like a huge performance bottleneck and all kind of weird stuff that happened to us. I think that was our initial inspiration to even think about this.
And what also pushed me further with this idea is using Remotion, because I do my React Native development, but when you use Remotion, you have access to the full graphical capabilities. And then it made me even more frustrated about the things you cannot do in React Native, and that really pushed me further to try to find a solution for this. And I'm glad. So before I show you what Christian did with the Skia integration in React Native, I'm glad also that I spent time to research alternative solutions, because it really makes you learn about how valuable Skia is and what the library brings to the table, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So for those who don't know what Skia is, what I know about Skia, it's not much, but what I know is that it powers the Google Chrome rendering engine, so that anything you see in a browser tab, that's powered by Skia, and also that Flutter is built on top of Skia. Is that right?
Yes, and Flutter is very good at doing 2D graphics. In fact, before I show you the work we've been doing with React Native Skia, let me show you one of my favorite Flutter app, because what they're doing is absolutely incredible. So it's the Philips Hue app. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah, I don't have like one of these lights, but I think you can then pick a color.
I love the product. I was loving it even before they were using Flutter, and the newly redesigned app with Flutter, actually the first time they released it was pretty clunky. And I was like, oh, is it like because of Flutter or whatever? But actually then they released updated version, which are absolutely incredible. I have no insights on how the project was done, but I'm sure it's a great success for them. We're going to talk about it, but there is a lot of great things. Let me show you. I'm going to go on your side and show you the Philips Hue app. Because, so speaking of delightful user experiences, so you see you have the color wheel and you have the drop shadows on the color wheel. Can you see it? So you see you can, and then you have the drop shadow on the pin, And here you see you have a nice spring animation. You move the color. You have the absolutely. And here it makes sense to use Flutter, right? An advanced 2D Canva to build these apps, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, even displaying the gradient and then on the movement, calculate the right
Animating
color
anything,
could
yes.
already be a challenge with the primitives that we have right now.
So it makes so much sense that they choose Flutter for this project. The thing is, what you just saw is not a Flutter app. This is a React Native app
Wow.
using the Skia module.
Damn, so it's alive.
It's alive.
It's a Skia
What I
based
did,
rendering.
yes, is that I took the Philips Hue app, which it's incredible, and it even has and I guess because they have these 2D capabilities, they even have innovative navigation primitives and so on. You can tell that they can really go crazy with it, and they've built something delightful. And this is me cloning the app for demonstration purposes using the Skia module.
Damn, and to prove it, you have just opened the developer menu. Man, that's crazy. And I would be curious what the code for it looks like.
Yes, absolutely. One thing that makes Skia hard to bring in React Native is that React Native is very good at declarative things, right? You create native views, and we know how to animate native elements very easily. But here it's a completely imperative API, a bit like OpenGL. And so you spend some time thinking about how do we integrate this in React Native, because it's a completely different model. Let me show you a couple of demos. So you've seen the Philips Hue demo here. So this is on Android, so it works on iOS and Android. It's using Metal on iOS. So again, this is why you need a top class engineer like Christian Falk to tackle this problem. And we're so lucky that he did, because it's very niche. Only a handful of engineers, I think, are capable of tackling such a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I know that this is such a low level of programming. I believe C++, right? So it's awesome not only that you took the initiative, but that you coordinated with other people to make this happen. I mean, I cannot even imagine how complex the C++ stuff is, because I know that, for example, I have huge respect for something that is like Google Chrome or Flutter, but then to go even a level lower and mess with something that powers one of these already low-level projects.
Yeah, so speaking...
It's hard.
Yes. So for me, this introduced me to GSI. And Christian did something really cool, is that so he did all the integration, and then basically also he provides you with utilities to do the GSI things. So maybe I build a demo and I'm missing a function from Skia. So the first thing you do is that Skia has a fiddle where you can write C++ code and test it live on the browser, and you have your example rendering, which makes you able to easily iterate, play with the API. So that's the first thing. You can play in the browser with Skia in C++. And then if this works, you're like, okay, this is what I want to do. There is a nice GSI utility functions you can use so it's actually pretty simple to then do the integration in C++. And also he has built the examples where if you have a complex API integration to do, you can look at some other example he built where I would say 95% of integration use cases are being developed already, so you can have examples with it. So yeah, this is also another example from Flutter app, which is the Reflectly app, and you can click on colors, and so you have this animated gradient, and you have a blur effect on the round. I mean, it's subtle. The gradient is subtle.
This is React Native.
This is React Native
on an Android emulator, and you are using a laptop,
which is an Intel,
which
not
is
a
an
non-M1,
Intel, and it doesn't have a beefy graphics card in there. It's not a desktop, And in the emulator 60, it looks perfectly smooth.
Yes.
Holy shit.
And you know how people, they always complain about not being able to drop shadows on Android. Well, now you can do.
No.
Now, if you can do it on Figma in terms of shadows, you can do it here. And I have an example here, which is a neuromorphism example. And so this is an inset shadow. So let me actually open the example. So what I did is that I implemented, and you can animate it. I just basically copied. So I think I have a website here, and you can just copy the values, the CSS values, and I have a utility function. So these are inset shadows. So you see the shadow inside. You can set it to false. It will become a drop shadow.
Wow.
And so never let anyone tell you that you cannot do drop shadows on Android with React Native.
Man, I am witnessing a breakthrough here.
A use case which I always wanted to do is this GUI effects, which
Wow.
was always requested in the. So it's a blur effect with a color matrix to actually remove the blur, and now it's we can take these things for granted. Hopefully, soon.
That's crazy. When I used Blur View on Android, not only could it not do this, but it would run at literally 5 frames per second on a good phone.
Yes.
Okay, now what are we looking at here?
Just a shader we copy pasted from Skia examples, so which is animated. We support images here, and images are like shaders, right? So you can also apply shaders on top of it. Gradients are shaders, so you can build your own custom gradients. So you can use, they have tons of utility functions to build. So of predefined gradient shaders, you can do any kind of gradient. If you can do it in Figma, you can do it with this module, and you can animate it by default. And let me maybe.
Yeah, what's crazy is that it's not just a box shadow implementation or a blur implementation. It's a general purpose breakthrough that allows you to create all kind of stuff, and that usually leads to like even more like things being created that you cannot even think of yet.
Well said. This goes beyond. So I had this couple of use cases that I wanted to implement and so on. But indeed, this goes way beyond this small list of use cases that I have. We expect people to do really insane things with it. And maybe, you know how sometimes you want to custom specific UI components. And then maybe you nest 10 views with each other with some styling, and you add some SVG because you need some complex things. And some primitives like shadows and blur are not available to you. So we expect people, instead of doing this, to just write 3-4 lines of Skia and be done with it. And so that's going to be their own custom UI component. Also, you remember how we talked a lot about text, and you did this text animation module, which was hard work. And we talked about also text performance. And we talked about having a bear down text component in React Native, and we said, oh, this is really hard to do.
Yes, it was not easy to do, and it actually breaks in every single React Native version, so I had to update it for 64, now for 65. So yeah, please just tell me you have a much better solution that I can deprecate it.
I think this is the solution.
Damn.
You get animation by default. You want blur motion. Maybe you have a counter and you want to blur the motion of the moving text. You have it by default. And you have here this animatable bear down metal text component. So in the U demo that you've seen, the text, there is some text. It's rendered using Skia.
That's crazy. And because I was also messing with, like, we have all these powerful ways to manipulate text in Google Chrome, for example, including text wrapping and like gradient text. That's, I believe, is also all powered by Skia. So I can only imagine how powerful this must be to be able to access all of these drawing primitives and maybe even go deeper than what is supported in Chrome.
Yes. Let me show you the API. It's actually, it's not the latest version of the API, but it's close enough. So we have a Skia view that you can style, and you see here it's styled. And you have a non-draw callback. And here we pass the animation value that are reanimated two values. And when these values change, we redraw the Canva. And so in the use draw callback, here we start
crazy.
some so you get a
it's
Canva, and then you can draw things, right, essentially.
crazy. So it's like so this is also a worklet, I assume, that runs on the UI thread.
No, it's the main JavaScript thread, but runs in a different thread. So the context is the JavaScript context, so no worklet, but it runs on the separate thread. That's how it's done.
I see. So that's kind of a new paradigm that you introduce with this.
It's I think we have these GSI modules like the GL view and the Skia view, and we're trying to figure out how to have integration between Reanimated 2 and these GSI APIs, these imperative APIs, which is a completely new problem, because before Reanimated 2 was really just for properties on native views, right? And I think Skia view is indeed setting a model for other GSI modules, which are imperative API, on how to integrate with Reanimated 2. It's obviously still a work in progress. So you see, for instance, here, you have these icons, and these are SVG paths, which just copied paste, right, from... so any SVG path we can support, any React Native transformations you can apply, we will do it.
That's crazy, because React Native SVG, for example, is now, I think, implemented basically from scratch separately on iOS and Android. And it doesn't support all the features like, for example, SVG filters. Here, I assume we have a shared C++ code base.
Exactly.
Which is actually such a much nicer way to implement this.
And obviously, this is way more powerful than SVG, right? So you have the world of shaders, WebGL. You have in terms of standards, right? You have the world of SVG. And here it's like the two combined and super composable. And I love that, you know how you do... So I came to React Native because I love the web and I was doing web development. And I loved that I could come with my web development skills. And then you do React Native, and then when you go back to React Native Web, you're thinking, whoa, actually there is a lot of nice things from the React Native model that I miss in the web. And this is where React Native Web is so great. And here it's a bit the same. So we come from the web, where you have incredible graphic capabilities, and then you play with Skia on React Native, and then you have this composability between shaders and drawing primitives and so on. And then you come back to web development, and you're like, oh, whoa, I'm missing some nice things about Skia. And so, in fact, in my next use of FreeMotion, I will probably use CanvaKit, which is the WebAssembly version of Skia. And because there is now probably some capabilities that I'm really missing, being used to this level of composability and power.
That's insanely wild. I mean, I don't yet know of anything.
You started it.
That's crazy. Like, so we're gonna see things that aren't even possible with Canvas, and going even deeper. I mean, insane. I love it, and what a breakthrough, really. To bridge this, what most of us know is just like as a crazy complicated C++ code. At least that's what it looks to me. And implemented in React Native. Were there any problems? I must assume for you as a JavaScript first developer, it wasn't like an easy way forward.
The funny thing is that I used to do a bit of C++ in a previous life, and I couldn't recognize the syntax. And people were telling me, like Christian or Mark Rusavi, who's doing great advocacy for GSI. I mean, GSI is really the future of React Native, and it's pretty exciting topic. They were telling me, no, but you know what? It didn't change so much. And I was like, that's weird because I'm really, but I guess you forget things. But actually, it's funny because the language has evolved so much that for them, C++11 is like an old version because now it's C++20 or something. But me, I didn't even know C++11. But anyways, but the GSI, I think maybe the boilerplate is really hard to do at the moment. But once the boilerplate is done, it's actually very easy to do, especially if you have examples to look at, because you can always copy paste from someone who did something similar in terms of integration. And it's actually pretty nice. And it's actually pretty seamless experience, I would say. So because you do it on the Android Studio, up, copy paste the function, run app, and then you can see the thing live.
That's crazy. And now I feel like I finally understand why JSI is being so hyped up, because now this is the third example that I see. The first one was, of course, being reanimated too with
Yes.
the shared values, and which also like introduced like a new paradigm. And you mentioned Mark Rusavi and
Yes.
his React Native vision camera, which is also getting a lot of buzz on Twitter because it's like, yeah, it enables so much new opportunities for camera and live detection of various stuff. And now this incredible Skia implementation.
Isn't that crazy how these things build on top of each other? Is that without GSI, you maybe don't have reanimated 2. Without reanimated 2, we cannot even think about integrating Skia. And suddenly there is this huge gap in the React Native ecosystem that gets filled progressively. And arguably, I would say that these 2D graphic capabilities after reanimated 2 is probably the biggest hole to fill in React Native.
It's crazy, and the best thing is I can still like write everything in JavaScript. I can
Yes.
see how you have implemented the API here, including hot reloading seems to be working.
It's going to work better it's going to work even better in the future. The version I am having here is not actually. Anyways, sorry.
Sounds good, and I'm sure a lot of people will jump on this and help you polish it even more. So how does it work that we can write JavaScript, which we all think of as slow, but here in this case, it's fast? I know it has something to do with like sharing memory with C++, but what is actually happening here that makes it so much faster?
So these functions here, so you have shared objects. So these objects, like for instance, Canva, Paint, are available in C++. And when you call drawLine, it's a direct C++ call that directly executes. So there is no more asynchronous messages and so on that directly execute the function in C++. You do have to maybe convert a JavaScript object to the primitives that, for instance, Skia needs, but it's very minimal, especially in with Skia, it's very simple primitives, right? You have integer values, the shader is a string. I mean, sometimes, okay, you have images, you have some other stuff, but or matrices, but it's still like incredibly fast because you only do so little. So this is the imperative API. What I expect, because React Native is not imperative, is that people are going to build declarative APIs on top of it. And the way Free.js does it, no, React Fiber does it, is through reconcilier, right? And so I just wanted to play with this idea because I think that people are going to take Skia and I mean, we've seen the Skia renderer experiment where here it's the whole React Native thing is rendered in Skia, right? You know which project I mean, right?
Yes.
So here I have an example. Let me. So we have SVG path. So this is just copy pasted from Figma and it will just work. And here you see you have something that looks like an SVG, right? So you have some circle component, and then you have composite component, like an icon, which is an SVG path, circle, and here I have another composite component, which is showing the 3 lines. And so the way this example works is that on every frame, I'm using it's a hack. I'm using, but because anyways, on every frame, I take the React test renderer that gives me a JSON snapshot of my.
Oh, wow.
So you can have conditional. You and I talked about advanced visits of the React tree, which you can do, but it's only static and you cannot deal with composite components, conditional rendering, and so on. Here it's really the snapshot, so even if you have states, composite, anything, and then uses it to render the frame. It's a bit slow, of course. I mean, it actually kind of works, but it's much slower than. But I'm sure someone is going to figure out the imperative approach to this. Yeah.
Yes, a lot of optimization potential for it as well. And what does it do? It renders an SVG to the screen?
No, it's Skia.
Using Skia?
Yeah. So, okay, maybe I can show you. So if we go to the not SVG component, so here I'm using the test renderer to get the snapshot. And on every frame, I visit the tree. And if we look at a primitive component like circle, so the interesting thing is that also it makes the component pressables. So it returns, if it's a pressable component, the pressable component. And then it has a static function called render, which will do the actual Skia rendering. It gets a drawing context, which is a Skia context, and then the Skia rendering. This is just a silly experiment. But obviously, immediately as soon as you enable this imperative API, you're thinking about how now do I make it declarative potentially. That's going to be the next frontier. Right now, I mean, this is still very experimental. We are trying to find a way to offer this module to the community to make it so that we can sustain its maintenance. And and then, so first Skia, and then we will see where, like you said, this opens so many use cases that we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, this is also something I am wondering about. I mean, it seems absolutely huge to me, and I can't wait to use it myself. I can think of so many use cases.
I mean, I'm sorry if this is going to sound dramatic, but I'm really being genuine. Once you tasted this Skia module, you cannot go back to regular React Native development. It's like going from reanimated 2 back to reanimated 1. Christian and I, now we are thinking about React Native development in a completely different way. This has completely shifted our mindset.
And I completely believe you that, I mean, if we say it, then we should say it here. It's an absolute game changer.
it's a completely different new game, yes.
Wow, and I'm completely sold on it. So what is your plan to release it? And I mean, this being so huge, do you plan on just putting it out for free, or do you even have plans to monetize it?
We want to release it for free if we can, but we are looking for support with industry partners so that we can, once we release it as open source, we can make sure that we can sustain its maintenance and educate people on how to use it and so on. So that's the current plan. We've built the proof of concept. We are very excited, and now we want to make a plan where we can offer this to the community in a sustainable way, where we can really sustain this for the long run.
That's great. Great news for everybody who wants to use it, that you are going with the model of industry partners. And I think companies will happily jump on this, I'm sure.
And something that happened with, so to Christian and to me also working on these projects, is that we have newfound respect for the web, because we use the web everywhere and we take it for granted. We don't even think about it. And then when you dig in to how these things are done, and it's, for instance, Skia, and how easy they make it look, even on low-grade Android devices and so on, Yeah, we have I came in to React Native development because of the web, because I love the web platform, and here again with this project I have newfound respect for the web. And you talked about us doing this in JavaScript and TypeScript, and it's just really sweet to see how this ecosystem is, how powerful it is and how rich it is. Yeah.
Amazing. Completely agree. And my final question, can I get beta access to it?
Yes, of course.
Nice.